My full name is Emmet Michael Suggett, and my stage name is Emmet Michael. I got involved first with doing music growing up in church. My mom always sang worship on the worship team, and I ended up going to a Christian school for most of my life, and it was a really great way to learn how to sing and collaborate with other people. Later on in life, I started to really struggle in my adolescence. I realized at a young age that I was queer, and growing up in a religious community, that was not something that was necessarily super acceptable. And I went down a really dark path of addiction for a while, and it was in rehab that I started to write songs about my life and start to tell my own stories through songwriting, and just getting to a space where it was like I was clean for the first time in my life and I needed a new outlet. And so from that point on, I've sort of just never looked back from that. I've always used songwriting as a tool to be able to tell my story in situations where that wasn't always easy. I am deeply empathetic, and I think that that is my greatest weakness and my greatest superpower in a lot of ways. And that has sort of been like the main force of what I do musically as well. I think my initial approach to any kind of project, it sounds kind of cliche, but it's true. It really does come from the heart, like whatever it is that I'm wondering about, pondering, feeling, thinking. That's sort of where the seed germinates, and then I'll take that and kind of just like allow myself to be bathed in those feelings and sit down with a guitar or on the piano, and just sort of the words will come after that. And so that's sort of what my process is. It's kind of abstract. In a lot of ways it feels like a very spiritual experience. And sometimes there's absolutely no process at all, and it's just chaos. Wake up in the middle of the night with a song on my mind, or I'll be driving down the highway and something will hit me. It's sort of like this unpredictable, out of nowhere kind of thing, and that's sort of what's fun about it, is you're taking that chaos and trying to find ways to harness it. And I think that's how it most often happens for me. I think first and foremost, it was my experience and relationship with the church as an institution, and really being somebody who is queer and trans. I was in a position where I was more likely to really question things, not just about that experience, but also about the world and about love. And I think that being raised in that kind of, in a lot of ways, quite restrictive environment, it forced me to be more intentional about breaking the mold and breaking out of that and asking those kinds of questions. I don't ever like to stay married to one genre. I like to pull from different genres to make sort of a new sound, and I'm not super obsessed about like, oh, is this going to be like folk enough? Is this on brand? I just sort of let it be whatever it is and take it from there. But I think on a deeper level, what's unique about what I do is that I'm talking about things that maybe for a lot of other people might be uncomfortable or taboo to talk about. And I think that art is the most accessible way to do that, for people to hear those kinds of messages that maybe they're not familiar with, or to hear stories they haven't heard before. And so I think it's really just like about the practice of vulnerability and making that shine through very obviously in the music. I think as a musician, in a commercialized world, it's hard not to consider wanting to create something that is consumable. And so I try, crazy cat. I try to, in everything I'm doing, to be authentically myself without worrying about what other people think. And on the other side of that, I think that people who feel the same way, who also feel vulnerable in the same ways or have similar stories, they're more apt to connect with somebody who isn't worried about appealing to the public, because there's so many other people out there who also have felt ostracized or like they don't quite fit into society. And so I think the biggest thing for me in telling my story, and what I find the most rewarding, is when I put out a song or I've just played a show and I get feedback like, you know, my kid just came out as trans and I don't know what to do, and watching you gave me some clarity. Or, you know, like I'm gay and I came out in my church, it's not going well, and hearing your song made me feel less alone. Like things like that, I think I'm very aware of that and I don't take that lightly, and that at the end of the day is what feeds my whole creative process. I know that through the pandemic, I was concerned that my career would come to a halt, and arts was a way that, like, still online, we were able to still project things and connect with people in that way. And so I don't know that without arts we really would have had the ability or capacity to have achieved that form of connection as strongly. Before, it was like a lot of live shows. I was doing a lot more live gigs than I was ever before, and obviously that couldn't happen anymore. And so I started doing regular live streaming. Like every week I had a live stream where I would collaborate with other artists or like just do my own thing. And I think it's really weird because in that period of time when you would think people would be the least connected, that's sort of like when I found my community. And I started like really talking to more people online, like across the world, about like the things that I personally was struggling with. That was when I started to write more authentically and openly about my experience as a queer person coming out of a church environment. And I found a lot of people who were going through the same thing. And I think that changed my approach to art tenfold, because I was able to reflect more from a place of being more authentic and more vulnerable, because I had the time to reflect on those things, and also because I had the time to connect with other people, oddly enough, in a more meaningful way, because I didn't have the rest of the world and my day job and all those things to be distracted by anymore. And yeah, I think that totally changed the way that I approached art. I think connecting with people is like the greatest fuel for creating art that is meaningful. I actually put together my first full-length album through the pandemic, and it was like a very sort of weird time to do so, but also the best time, because I wasn't playing so many live shows. I had a lot of time on my hands. I was lucky enough to get funded by the province and by the city to do the project. Otherwise, I never would have been able to. And so I was like, okay, great. I have all this time on my hands and I have some funding to work with. And so I picked up some songs from before the pandemic. So I wrote some new songs. There were songs I recorded that I'd written just like 2 weeks prior, and was able to put together this little album, released it in COVID, did an online concert to celebrate it. And that was not something I think I would have anticipated doing when COVID first hit. But I'm grateful that I had like the opportunity and the time to really put that project together. I think the hardest thing for me transitioning out of restrictions being lifted is number one, wrestling with, well, just because restrictions have been lifted doesn't mean necessarily that it's safe. And I think it's hard when everyone has the mindset, when seemingly everyone has the mindset of, okay, it's okay now. It's very easy to be like, okay, it's okay now, I have nothing to worry about. And that's sort of when things got bad again. And at the same time, selfishly, you're like, great, let's get the show on the road. Like, I'm ready to get out there and play again. But I think the thing that was the most difficult for me is right before the pandemic, I felt like I finally conquered my fear of being on stage. And all of that went away after the pandemic because I wasn't practicing that aspect of my craft as much, or at all, really. And so I felt like that scared little kid again, getting on the stage for the first time. Or that was a really scary place to be. But something that I was sort of in awe of, despite those feelings of fear, is everyone was so excited to be together again and to watch live music, that support was palpable. Being on stage, it just felt like I was amongst family, and it was very easy to just be like, okay, like there's a lot of grace and love in this room, and if I make a mistake here or there or fumble my words, that's like very human, and everyone else here knows, especially after this time, what it's like to be very, very human. I'm trying to think of the word for what I'm looking to describe, but I think it was just a sense of like being held, even in a time where we couldn't be anywhere near each other. I think people are more apt to come together when they're all going through the same dark thing. And I didn't really realize how loved and supported I was as a musician and a human until the pandemic hit, because people they were realizing the importance of expressing that, the importance in our loneliness and being away from each other, in knowing that we are still loved and that we can still be connected and we're not going through this alone. I generally, as restrictions are lifted, I generally feel grateful that I'm at a point now where I can tour, where I can travel. I just did a songwriting residency in the Yukon that I never would have been able to do had restrictions not been lifted at all. There were a lot of things that I can do now that I couldn't do before. But also in the back of your mind, it's like, you want to be safe, and more importantly to me is like making sure that other people are safe. And so we're sort of going into uncharted territory where people don't really know what the best practice is. And I think navigating gray area is humans always suck at navigating any kind of gray area. And that's not something that I've mastered or probably will ever master. And so it's really just that for me. I think where I get most of my joy and reprieve and sense of purpose is in being able to talk to people after shows and like also hear from them like, oh, that's your story too. Like, I was really missing that piece in my life, and so to have that back again, that sort of, because I think arts and creativity are a very reciprocal process, and so having something that I could share, that's great, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot unless you can get something back. And by that I mean like knowing that you've reflected how other people feel as well, and really just connecting with people in a meaningful way again. We all give and receive love in different ways, and so I think that generally a love letter, it would differ depending on who or what it was dedicated to. And I think in order to express love, it's erasing that fear of being vulnerable, or rather like freely stepping into that fear and being like, yeah, this is a scary thing, but it's because it means something. And that's sort of like when I think of a love letter, it's like stepping into the fear of vulnerability and putting it all out there, because that's what life is all about. That's like where life's most beautiful joys and triumphs are. In order to express love, it's erasing that fear of being vulnerable, or rather like freely stepping into that fear and being like, yeah, this is a scary thing, but it's because it means something. I think that there's a misconception that it's all like money-minded and business-like, and that is the most important thing in order to get noticed and achieve a successful career. And I think that if you're being authentic, you're coming from a place of just being yourself, then you will find your audience. They will connect with you, and people can sniff out if you're being fake or trying to be like somebody else. And there's enough room in the world for people to just like be who they are. And I think that's where the best art is created, when people are focused on sharing who they are instead of trying to project an image of what they think the world wants to see. Like, you see your friend achieve this great thing, it's very easy to get into a space of like, well, why can't I do that? Why didn't I do that? Why are they so successful at this? And it becomes very competitive, and I find that we all achieve a lot more when we are in collaboration with each other rather than competition with each other. And that's something that I've had to learn a lot over the years, because as humans it is easier to compare ourselves to other people, and I find that the most beautiful art is created of just being yourself and being supported and supporting other people. I think that art has become a vessel for all of the things that I would otherwise be ashamed or afraid to say out loud. And I think as humans, our world's biggest problems come from a place of shame and having things in the dark and not being able to express ourselves as we genuinely are and find acceptance for those things. And I think art is a medium that unabashedly approaches those things. And for me personally, it's allowed myself to express aspects of who I am that I otherwise would not have been able to project outwardly for fear of being rejected or not good enough. And I think the freedom to express our deepest fears is really, really important, because I think we all feel those feelings of feeling like we don't really belong in certain spaces, the fear of not being accepted, not being able to connect with other people. And art is a way that we can share our stories and see ourselves reflected back, and in that way know that we're not alone in any of those feelings. And I think that that's the most important aspect of it, is that general reciprocity and the knowing that like we don't have to be perfect in order to show up in a space, and that that's like the beauty of the whole thing of being human. Yeah.
phone up a friend, ask how they've been, wave through the window, wish you could call me. My lonely is blue, your absence is yellow. I wanna be green, make that giant channel. Though I feel the ache of a missing embrace, the heart just grows fonder, so it won't have to break. Trust that I'm smiling, though you can't see my face. Trust that I'm longing to be together again. There's no love lost, it's taking up the space. The space between us can't make that go away. Waiting for the day that I can say it to your face. No love lost along the way. At home with your family, watch me sing on a screen, and it wasn't the same, but you did it for me. And I couldn't tell you what that sentiment means. You gave me my voice back when I couldn't sing. There's no love lost, it's tangled in the pain we carry with us, but we can share the weight. Waiting for the day that I can say it to your face. No love lost along the way. The doors open up and I'm back on the stage, anxious to be there, but held in your grace. And I wanna tell you what your face seems to say. No time or distance could ever take love away. A reverence for joy after mourning for loss, a new admiration for the ones that I've got. So this is my love song to the place I was made. And no time or distance could ever take that away. There's no love lost, it's taking up the space. The space between us can't make that go away. Grateful that today I get to say it to your face. No